How hard is it really to become a professional footballer?
Extremely. I think it's a small number of players that make it. You're looking at hard work, dedication, sacrifice, discipline.
Jay, I want to become a professional footballer.
Yeah.
What are the three kind of things that you would say to them? Are you willing to do this?
It's a really good question, actually. So, welcome back to another video with Max Sports Management International. Me and Ronnie have actually just been having a conversation, so it's a bit of an off-the-cuff scenario today. We thought we'd have a conversation around the makings of a footballer. Obviously, some people can get an idea of what it really takes, but I think nobody really knows. So, yeah, I think me and Ronnie are going to kick it off and have a conversation around that, which hopefully people are interested in.
Yeah, I mean, let's just start off with the basic question of how hard is it really to become a professional footballer?
Extremely. I think people really don't have an idea of what really goes on behind the scenes, whether that's a young player and the family sacrifice, or a first team player who's not able to walk outside his front door to be able to go and, you know, go to the shops or whatever. I think it's very, very difficult. I think it's a small number of players that make it. I think that in England we're very lucky. We have 92 clubs, we have lots of slots, but the diversity between the bottom of the tree versus the top of the tree is huge. But when a player's young, they're always going into it from a point where they're not necessarily thinking about what comes with it in terms of lifestyle and money. They're coming into it from the love of the game. So that passion is what gets them to a certain point. But then obviously the nitty-gritty side of the game comes into play. So when you look at, for me, the makings of a footballer, you're looking at hard work, dedication, sacrifice, discipline, and lots of other things. So I just think that most people don't really understand, because you could even then get to a certain level at 16, and there's these kind of leaping moments, isn't there, in the game, from being 14 and being involved in a game and then getting offered your scholarship, your professional contract, signing a long-term deal, and those milestones are actually really hard to overcome, and each one's a hurdle. And in between that, obviously you've got injuries that could take place, family situations where you're not quite on it, you're moving house, you're moving country, all those things that come into it. I think people don't quite understand. And Ronnie, obviously I know from your background and your brother being involved in the industry, you've probably seen a bit of that, right?
Yeah, my brother, obviously, like we just spoke about, was in a professional game, was a professional for 2 years at West Ham. So yeah, I mean, but he had a very bumpy road with injuries and stuff. Played a lot on his mental health, and he was only young. So I like going on to that as well. At such a young age, the pressure and the expectations just put on them. How do they deal with that?
Yeah, I think that's when it's good to have a good team around you. I think it's really, really important that I explain to young players that they really need their family, but they also need the guidance around of it. Some of it's emotional and some of it's business. So in my experience, it's always good to lean on the different dynamics within your team, let's say. So, you know, you obviously have the emotional side with the family, and they know that player, you know, inside out, but then you've also got scenarios on the flip side where not all players have their family around. So I think that those dynamics can be really, really difficult to play on. And when it comes down to mental health, I think that, you know, we do live in a modern era where clubs are so much better than they were, but I do still think that there's more that can be done. I think, you know, we've all seen recently with that PFA 11 where you've got had players like Ravel Morrison in there, and you're looking at it going, wow, one of the best players that I've ever seen growing up in the game, and I've been doing this job for 16 years, and you think how? But then it does come down to how did he handle it? Was it his bad decisions? Was it the club's bad decisions? Was it opportunity and whatever? And all those things kind of lead, for me, the importance of having the right team around you, really. So, you know, when it comes down to looking at what your brother experienced, would you say he had to lean more on his family, or was it the football club? Were they good? Were they bad? And, you know, it's very, very easy to blame, but then you've got the side of it is, you know, sometimes players are just as bad, you know, in terms of the decisions that they make. So I think we all have to take ownership in terms of the scenario, but of course you have to lean on the help. And, you know, I know as an example, and I'm a big advocate of it, is clubs have psychologists to go and see. players don't like to do it, and I totally understand why, because they feel that it's a lack of confidence and they're talking to all the other players. But what I would say is it's all private and confidential, but it also has to be down to the player that they're willing to open themselves up, and that's life generally, isn't it, mate?
Yeah, it is. And something you just mentioned there, like with leaning on people, especially in our situation when my brother was at a club. Yeah, and he experienced the mental side of it really bad, really quite bad actually. What I kind of got the vibe from it was, I mean, at the end of the day, it's like anything. It's a business sport, right?
Yeah.
Clubs have to make money, not lose money. And when he was kind of going through that stage of the mental health, it was more leaning on his family rather than the club. The club were just kind of more interested in getting back what they've already paid for him.
Yeah.
And then moving him on elsewhere. There wasn't too much done behind the scenes. This is going back a few years. So obviously, I mean, since like all of the Dele Alli stuff and everything's come out, it has got better. But yeah, like when he was going through it, it was more of a leaning on family. Like it got to a point where he said to us that he would just give it all up.
Yeah. Which is tough, right? And I think that, again, coming back to the makings of the footballer, which is obviously what we want to talk about. I think, you know, the brutality of the game can smack you in the face. You never know when it's going to hit you. The loyalty of the game is something that you don't always see. And whether that's the mental resilience, whether it's the discipline, I think we can't get away from the fact that we are in an entertainment business, that people want things now. Yeah. So look, no one is gonna, you know, so kind of forgive for that. So you just have to prepare that if you want to be involved in this industry, you're better off learning early. So when you're coming into it because you love the game, you know, you're not always thinking that you're going to be involved in these scenarios, but I can give you so many scenarios where, you know, players have made bad decisions or good decisions, or, you know, and there is some players that actually just get away with it. And I think that just depends on the talent. And, you know, I know players that absolutely give 100% of their time and they still don't get the opportunities that they deserve. And why is that? You know, there is no answer to that, because we just live in that cutthroat world. Yeah. So there's no point getting away from it, that you just have to live like it is what it is, and hopefully managing it to a point. So what I say is just get rid of the excuses. So just live right, be right, do right, and everything that comes with that, then you're getting rid of most of the things that are going to stop you being successful.
I mean, yeah, like the makings of a footballer. I mean, like a lot of people watch it, football fans, and say like they get paid silly amounts of money.
Yeah.
All they've got to do is run around the pitch for 90 minutes. But I don't think people really see. I mean, from my background, I can see what goes on trying to become a footballer. But people don't see what happens behind the scenes, what they have to do, what they have to give up to be able to be where they are.
Yeah. So
like, how do you think that they like deal with all of that kind of stuff, not being able to go out with friends, yeah, the pressure to perform in front of all these big crowds, and just kind of have the mental resilience to live like that until, I don't know, you're like 35, 40.
Yeah. I mean, again, it's really tough. Yeah, really, really difficult. You have to sacrifice your own life in order to do what you love. And, you know, again, it's like you could meet a girlfriend at 17 and she might stay with you, but there's, you know, let's say you're 18 and you're going out on loan and you're moving 5 hours away from your home. Is that person that lives around the corner going to come with you? You know, that might get in the way. And then you've got those sorts of things that can affect a young footballer. And I think that, you know, you can call these young lads selfish, but they're not. They're just going to try to achieve their dreams. So that's a really, really difficult thing, because when they're 14, 15, they're not doing it for the money because they don't earn it. So when they're thrown into a world that they've got no idea about, I think that it's really easy for just to say that when you're going to go and watch a football game on a Saturday afternoon, if you're watching Premier League, Championship, League One, League Two, you're saying that they earn good money for doing what they love. Yeah, they do. But, you know, ultimately they're the ones that have decided to work hard to get there. So when, you know, young players are 16 and they start deciding to go out with their friends and not sacrificing their life to be successful, then how can you then blame them for going to sign a long-term contract based on the sacrifices that have been made? Flip side, there's lots of players like your brother that have actually done both and still not made it. So he didn't go into it from a point of view of thinking that he's going to sign a 5-year contract and protect his family. So when they do, I think it's really important that, you know, everything's protected. And when they can't go out on a Saturday evening because they're going to be, you know, I don't know, a journalist is going to want to go and try and talk to them or snap them, you know, to be involved in the media or whatever, I think it's really, really difficult. So for me, I just really find it difficult that people are, let's say, jealous of the scenario when a footballer is successful, because they really have no idea how hard it is.
No, that last line you just said there, I completely agree with. I think a lot of people are just jealous of the lifestyle that they kind of live, the money that they earn, and it's just easy, obviously, just to throw backlash at them as soon as they're not performing.
And also, you look at my job, let's say, and you're looking after a player from between the ages of 15 to 20. You know, you can't say that you're then involved in that for monetary reasons. Of course, I'm running a business long term. If my players are successful, I'm successful. It's just how I live, and I absolutely love what I do. But at the start of that journey, you know, you're not involved in it for those reasons. And some players become successful when you have a successful journey together. Some are not. So then it comes down to, again, the makings of a footballer. You kind of divert them and help them in other areas and other avenues. But you really have got to maximise it, because they say you have 8 good years in football. So again, that when you get to the age of 20 to 30, which are the good years, or 22 to 30, which roughly is around the age group of where you're going to be the most successful. If you're starting at 12 and then having to wait till 22, which is 10 years, to then have an 8 good years, how can you then blame that someone's going to want to go and maximise that scenario? And again, a club's going to want to maximise their scenario. They're going to pay a lot of money from, which is then becomes a big expectation. Is it somebody's fault that a club are willing to go and spend £100 million on them and then just expect them to hit the ground running? You know, let's say a player comes over from abroad, they leave their family, they leave the scenario that they live in, and then that then next season that they've just got to then be successful. It's really, really difficult, because sometimes you're forgetting that they're humans. You know, if you started a job next week, you know, naturally you'd walk into the front door and be a little bit nervous, right? It might take you 6 months to get on your feet, but you don't have that in football. You've literally got to hit the ground running, and if not, the next day you're in the front of the news that people are just saying that you're not worth the money. I mean, that's not an easy thing to handle, is it?
Yeah, it's just not like a normal day-to-day life, is it? You don't have that settling in period. You expected just to go in and be what you was like at your old club.
Yeah.
But there's just so many different factors, like you said, when you move in countries, you know, the scenario, not being with your family because you've moved abroad. There's just so many different things that play into the fact of the makings of a footballer, and the, again, going back to it, the pressure and stuff that they have to have on them. Do you find that you have to keep some of the boys motivated to be able to do it, or is that kind of a natural thing that should just come within them to want to be able to become a footballer?
No, I think you grow over time. Obviously, I don't start looking after players until they're 16, let's say, but of course we're scouting from an earlier age or whatever. But for me, you have to understand who you're working with, whether their family scenario is secure or not, as the case may be, and either of which is fine. You just need to know the mentality, because some people grow at different ages. If I look back when I was young, and I played for Peterborough when I was young, if you looked at me at 15, I was a little pussy. I really, really was. And I look at it and I think that some of the things that helped me become mentally resilient were just the knockbacks that I got in the game, that I wasn't quite good enough, that players would play ahead of me and whatever. And I had really good players in my team that became really, really successful. I mean, I had a player called Jack Collison in my team, who you may know, played for West Ham, and he became very, very successful. And you just knew. You knew, because of the sacrifices that he made, and he had certain things happen in his family, and he just had it. And I didn't at the time. But what I learned is over time, I became stronger when I was a little bit older. But I think what you have to understand is just the personality of that player, because everyone grows at different times. It's no different to a physio looking after a 19-year-old or a 29-year-old. you know, they have to be managed different to put, you know, even though they've both got to play 40 games within a season, you're managing them differently, aren't you? And mentalities grow at different times and players hit at different times. You look at the different types of bodies that, you know, are growing up. The mind's the same, isn't it?
Yeah.
You know, and it all clicks at different times. And sometimes a player has to play 150 games to become successful. Sometimes a player bursts on the scene in 20 games, they get their move, and, you know, sometimes you never hear of again, and sometimes they do. So you look at some of the scenarios, especially again in the youth market now, these lads are having to make huge decisions at 15, 16 years old that are financially going to change their life before even kicking a first team football. So that comes at a cost, doesn't it? So my thing, and especially within the company that we're running, we really want to try and prep them and help them with confidence, help them with building their mind. And you do that by setting targets, you do that by setting them around the right people, and whether they want a mentor. It's another video that we're definitely going to do, and having a mentor I think is really important, whether that's an ex-player or someone who's an expert in their field. You know, these people know how to build the mind, because the clubs are meant to be good at what they do. But obviously when they leave training at 2 o'clock, there's a lot of time when you have boredom, they can go out and all these sorts of things. And they're the things that people miss, in my opinion.
If someone was to come to you and say, look, Jay, I want to become a professional footballer.
Yeah.
What are the 3 kind of things that you would say to them that, are you willing to do this?
Yeah, okay, that's a really good question, actually. I think you have to, 1, sacrifice your life to have that life. 2, are you prepared to be disciplined for 20 years? And 3, are you willing to give up, you know, the rest of your life in order to give it all to football? Because if you don't, I don't think that you realistically can actually make it to the highest level. I think that there's plenty of players that have been really good that have still not got to the levels that they probably could have, based on them wanting other things. And I think what you need to do is you need to go into that relationship just knowing that, you know, yes, you want to live that life, but are you actually willing to sacrifice? I don't know if you've watched it, but if you watch the Ronaldo movie, I think that you can look at it 2 ways. You can either look at it that you're walking into this mansion where he's got all these nice cars out there, and he's walking into the pool, and you can look at it as how lucky is he.
Yeah.
Or I flip it on its head and I look at it and I go, okay, so he's actually built his life where he walks in, he's already built the swimming pool, he's already built the, he had the bike in the pool where he's getting on and do it. So you're telling me that most people live like that? No, they don't. He's actually mapped his life around being successful because he can just get out of bed in the morning and go and jump on the bike. But some people don't see it like that. They see it on the other side, of which is the kind of jealousy side. And I don't agree, the luxurious side, like you say. But again, you know, he probably did that when he was young, but obviously not with the luxury things around him then. He done that, you know, coming over from Portugal when he came to Manchester United and whatever at a young age, and to go from where he was to versus where he is now. And those sacrifices are made every day. You know, you have to. When you wake up in the morning, you have 2 choices, don't you? You've got your devil on your shoulder and the person that then wants to get you out of bed in the morning and go and be successful. I think we all have those decisions to make every day of our lives. And for me, you know, going back to the 3 things: consistency, discipline, and hard work. I don't think you can, there's no substitute for that.
I don't think there's anything more to say or touch on that subject. I think the thing I've got from that is, you know, hard work beats talent when talent don't work.
100%.
So yeah, I think we'll leave it there, Jay.
Yeah, top man. Thanks, Ronnie.